Good morning, I'm Brian Fernandez on biztech's Conversations. Today our guest is from the music business. He's Darren Choy, the Managing Director of Warner Music Malaysia. Now Darren is going to share some insights about the music business, which is fascinating because of its ability to evolve with technology and changing tastes over the last few decades. Welcome to the show, Darren.
Thank you so much, Brian.
Now, Darren, you work for Warner Music Malaysia. Now, besides Warner Music, you're one of three companies, the others being Universal and Sony Music, that essentially control about 70% of the music business.
That's right.
Could you give us some insights into Warner's global business and then the business in Malaysia as well?
Yeah, I guess Warner Music Group is actually based out of the US, and we actually have about 50 affiliates or subsidiaries all over the world, and we are literally a home of some amazing songwriters, some amazing artists, and of course we also own lots of companies that's literally changing the cultures of the world. Now, we obviously have four very iconic labels. One is actually Warner Records, the other one is Atlantic, then we have Elektra and Parlophone. So whereas for Warner Music Malaysia itself, we've been here since 1978. We were founded in 1978, and part of what our role within the organization is really to promote our artists from all over the world, including signing of domestic acts. So we promote artists from Taiwan, we promote artists from China, US, UK, South Africa, and of course even our closest neighbor Singapore when we have got artists. So part and parcel of what we do is also as I say, it's also something that we will have to do is to sign domestic acts. So we have people like Elizabeth Tan, we have Aiza Amdan, we have Kaka that's actually signed with Warner Music Malaysia. Yeah.
Now, what's the business split like in terms of international artists versus domestic artists?
Yeah, for Malaysia, we I would say predominantly still international. It's probably 60% of the consumption and our revenue is generated from international repertoire. Where international repertoire in this case would mean English, it could also mean K-pop, it could also mean Chinese. Okay. Whereas domestic takes up about, I would say, about 30%.
And that's mainly Malay medium?
Malay medium, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the music business is fascinating because it's just evolved tremendously with the times. And one of the key things that I always think about is the fact that the music business has been very, very clever in terms of embracing the digital realm,
right,
keeping the revenue for itself,
right,
compared to the media business. So the media business, literally, the most of the money is made by Facebook and Google, but the music business,
right,
the three big boys still make all the money.
Right.
Walk us through the evolution of the music business from the time you and I were listening to vinyl and cassettes.
Yeah, the wonderful thing about music is that I would say even before our time, we were talking about literally the records, literally not even the vinyls, but literally the records, right? So then there came the cartridges. Besides, after the cartridges, that's when cassette became the mass appeal format. Now, if you were to look at it, those days, we will always really go through such evolution in terms of the delivery. Now, the music industry is very good in terms of being able to find the right formats to deliver the music. Now, from cassettes, it went to CDs, and eventually it became digital. Now, to a certain extent, what you said was that we were very good in terms of embracing technology. At some point in time, we were not very good at it.
Yeah, pre-Napster.
That's right. When Napster came in, we were against Napster. We would say, well, peer-to-peer is bad for us. No, it's not going to happen and things like that. But eventually, we've also, as an industry, we've learned the lesson of being able to embrace a new technology or a new format by saying, can we be partners? Because eventually we realized that Napster literally opened up a whole ecosystem of sharing music digitally. And at that time, because physical CDs and to a certain extent cassettes were still prevalent, and because it's still prevalent, we were trying to protect our ecosystem. We were trying to protect our so-called our business and say, no, we are not ready for new technology.
But because at that time the whole mindset was it's going to cannibalize our existing business.
That's exactly what it is. So it was also that, and that's why I think right now, if you look at it, post Napster, to a certain extent now, we are talking about Apple Music, we are talking about Spotify, we are talking about Joox, we are talking about Deezer, Tidals. That's basically when the industry was able to actually say, let's just embrace them, right? Simply because we realized that they are there to be able to help us. They become the conduit to the content. So we always look at what you call the digital service providers. In this case, streaming services. Even YouTube, for example, is considered a digital service provider, whereby they are merely a pipe. We are the stuff that goes through the pipe. So if you really look at it, it is actually a relationship or an ecosystem that we should be working together in terms of being able to say, you need a pipe, you are doing the pipe, I'm going to give you the stuff to go through the pipe. So that's where we are at. Why the music industry is at the state we are in, quite positively, I would say, because of that. Yeah.
Then also the way music is created is also different. So traditionally we've got guitars here.
Yep.
So a young kid will get a guitar and learn how to play a guitar or piano or so forth. Today, the young kid gets a Pioneer DJ controller and starts producing music with his laptop. Now, so how has that impacted the music business in terms of the artist business and the content business?
I would say it's really, if you look at it, I would say it's really, you can look at it two ways. One is that it gives the record companies or the music companies a wonderful pool of new talents. Now I can go into social media and say, hey, you know what? I found this boy on YouTube. I found this girl on Instagram. So that's what it is. Then there's also the other aspects where it also creates a lot of competition for existing artists, existing creators or existing music makers, because they need to up the game, because they need to also look at it and say, how do I actually make it relevant so that these people can understand me, these people can still keep me popular. So I think that's really, really, really a true answer to a question of yours. Yeah.
Now, pre-COVID, the global music industry was broadly had two major income streams.
Yes.
Basically the live music side of it, and then the recorded music side of it. Live music slightly more than, because some artists made a lot of money out of live touring.
Sure.
Now, in terms of the other side of the business, the recording music business, obviously the streaming services, the physical sales, and also sponsorships were a big part of it. Post-COVID, how do you think that's going to evolve?
Well, I would say that as far as delivery of the music, it will still be pretty much the same. What we have also seen is that pre-COVID, during the COVID, which we are still in it, and post-COVID, you will still continue to see increase in terms of streaming consumption. You will still see people continue to consume a lot of stuff on YouTube, Facebook, and whatever platforms it may be, as far as where music can be delivered. But I guess when we look at let's just say post-COVID, in terms of live music, that could obviously change.
Because if you look at the Malaysian context, in fact global context, the live music business has disappeared.
Yes.
And that was a large chunk of artist revenue previously. So how do you think they're going to make up for that shortfall?
Okay. So what will happen is that a lot of artists are now starting to pivot. Now, one would be, okay, if I can't do a physical concert, can I actually do a live stream concert? Chances are, answer is yes. And then you can also see that a lot of times what has happened is that a lot of concert promoters have actually gone out doing virtual festivals.
That's right. And in fact, I discovered during the lockdown, I discovered a lot of new music via YouTube, via these live streaming concerts, and DJs literally spinning music from their bedrooms.
That's right. So now that is where we're heading towards, right? So what will happen is that they're saying, you know what, I'm going to do it from my bedroom. I'm going to do it in my house. And eventually, what will happen is that it's also really cultivating the habit, or not necessarily habit, but in this case, cultivating the mindset of saying, you know what, there is actually going to be a certain value to my performance. So hopefully consumers will start to pay. So once consumers start to pay, then this becomes a different new format of delivering live concerts, in this case, live streaming. But the other thing that can happen is that a lot of artists are starting to also look at it and say, besides me being a singer, could I do something else? Some of them will end up doing songwriting, some will produce, some will start acting, some will literally go into certain talents that can be commercially exploited.
So your social commerce elements there.
That's right. The so social commerce now becomes a very important thing, because I could literally now go onto Facebook, I'll do a song and somebody pays me. I could literally say, guess what? I'm just going to do a guitar, or maybe not a guitar, but I would say, let me just create a cupcake. And then I can eventually say, you know what, Darren's Cupcake, and there you go. So, you know, as a talent, I could literally use my existing popularity of X number of followers that I have on my social media to use it, and promote my cupcakes, literally. So there are actually ways. So of course, it will not be the same compared to those days where we could say, let's just go out and do a huge 20,000 seater concerts. Those days are probably not necessarily over. It could actually take a very different form, but there are also other ways of talents and artists and creators in terms of finding other types of money. You know, the good thing is also, you know, a lot of times, a lot of artists now will have to start building their own social media following, their popularity. That one becomes their media. You know,
in other words, the artists have to take more control of their careers compared to the past, or in terms of their brand image and how they are seen. And it's an opportunity. Yes. It's also a threat to them.
That's right. So in fact, I would say that the record companies sometimes play a role in this case, because certain artists will say, I do not necessarily know how to do this. So I need to grow my Instagram following. I need to actually grow my TikTok, you know, followers and stuff like that. So many times a record label will be able to actually provide those resources, those sort of perspective, and literally the muscle to be able to do that.
So Darren, it's interesting because artists in different parts of the world are managed differently. So they manage themselves. Could you give us some insights? Some of them I think only have one manager, some have multiple managers.
Yeah, you know, in the West, I would say it's very prevalent for artists to actually have their personal managers. They will actually have a concert manager. Sometimes they could have their legal managers. So, and simply because of the scale that they are in. You know, they are in a much bigger market, and hence they probably need a lot more assistance in that area. Whereas, you know, closer to home in Malaysia, we may actually have one manager who basically handles everything. You know, from sponsorships to concerts to, you know, recording deals to anything else. So it could be those sort of perspectives. It depends on the scalability of the artist and also the size of the market. So, but I would say that having managers is actually a great thing, because it actually takes away, you know, the need of the artist to say. Those days, artists used to be, I'm my own manager. I'm also my own PR person. I'm also my own makeup artist. That's what it is. But because right now the business has actually gone a lot bigger, a lot more professional, then specialization kicks in. Yeah. So
now, Darren, because you're responsible for Malaysia, what do you think is the way forward in terms of the Malaysian entertainment business? Because obviously a lot of artists are suffering. The pubs, clubs and stuff are closed, and conceivably now will be closed for the next few months at the very minimum, possibly for the next 12 months.
Right.
So how do you see this moving forward? How do you see this playing out?
Yeah, I would say that the great thing about, you know, the music industry right now is that we do actually see a growth in the music industry. Growth in the sense that there's revenue growth, there is consumption growth. And simply because we are still very much at the infancy stage of getting people into consuming music digitally. Why I say that is because I'll use an example of Sweden. Sweden has about maybe 7-8 million people, population-wise, right? And they have about 50% subscribers. 50% of their population subscribes to Spotify. So just imagine that's about, you know, let's just say, just call it, just say 50%. Yeah. So that's actually a wonderful benchmark. But of course, Spotify comes from, you know, from Sweden,
so hence, it's a native,
by default, it's like, you know what, I'm going to have to support. It's just like, everything I have, it's about IKEA, right? Everything is about, you know, about that. So going back to, you know, closer to home, I would say that Malaysia has 32 million people. We are only literally scratching the surface in terms of subscribers. Why I say that I'm very optimistic about the industry is simply because if we may not necessarily go to what the level of what Sweden has achieved, but if we were to do 5% of our population, we are still talking about 1.5 million subscribers. We are probably now only about, you know, maybe 600,000-700,000.
Okay, but that's subscribing to Spotify, which the money goes out.
Right.
How do we make money in the music business now? Today, for all these guys who are not making money.
Yeah, so technically it's not about money going out, right? Because what has happened is that the more how the streaming services work, streaming services, or rather in this case I call DSPs, streaming platforms work, is that they license our content. So we, as the creators of content, are the owners of content, we license to them. So in a way, if let's say for example, you will stream Elizabeth Tan's single 100 times, what will happen is that the DSP, whatever it may be Spotify, it may be Apple, it could be Jukes, they would just basically pay us a certain amount based on 100 streams that we receive. Then from there, it gets funneled back to us. From a record company, we will actually funnel it back to the artist. So in a way, it's also for us to be able to say, hey, if we continue to grow the subscribers, grow consumption, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on Spotify, we will eventually grow as an industry.
So as the artist, in this case, the artist base will grow and benefit from that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And not only that, as I say, if you look at it, social commerce now becomes so important to a lot of artists. They realize if I am an artist that does 90% of my revenue coming from live concerts, and now I don't have them, what do I do? So, from a record company standpoint, we would teach them to say, we'll tell them, hey, you need to start pivoting. You need to go into social commerce. You need to do this and that. So in a way, we become their advisors, we become their guardians, and we nurture them and literally bring them to a certain level that we want them to be in terms of being able to make money. A lot of artists will end up saying, oh, yeah, great. I've got this brand that comes to me, and I would like to just do a social media posting, and I'll charge 3,000 ringgit. So if you actually have enough of those attraction to the brand, then you could literally continue to survive. So that becomes your new revenue streams. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting, and it's quite fascinating insights from the music business.
Right.
But Darren, I want to talk now about two of your passions, which
right.
also caused you to leave the music industry for 2 stints in your career, your
right.
music career. One was one is your passion for Liverpool.
Yes.
We are both Liverpool fans of football, and we won last year, but we just got thrashed.
Yes, I know.
Recently.
It's just a wake-up call.
I think it's a very good, healthy wake-up call.
It is.
But the second passion, which we also both share, is Formula One.
That's right.
Now, you were part of the pioneering Malaysian Lotus team that was set up all those years ago with Tan Sri, Tony Fernandez, and Kamarudin Meranum.
Yeah.
Share with us what it was like to be part of that early team.
Yeah, I would say to me, it's just pure euphoria, right? It was exciting. At first I told Tony, I said, are you sure you want to go into this? It is actually a very expensive sport. They said, you know what, I am sure. So, Tony being an entrepreneur, he will definitely want to, he said, you know what, there's no turning back, I'm going to go for it. And I would say that it was amazing because we literally started everything from scratch. It was like, here, white canvas. So it was a great thing for us to be able to be given a white canvas because we were learning as we move along. Okay. There were some expensive lessons, there were some not so expensive lessons, but in terms of setting up a team. So it was also getting the right people, it's about getting the systems right, it's about getting the right vendors. So it was really, we were learning as we move along, which was not too bad in terms of how the team was set up. But of course, there were challenges. The challenges were, you have literally a Malaysian team, and you also have part of a British legacy. So
and the big problem with that, I think, is even today, Formula One is rather parochial. It's not a very diverse, and even then 10 years ago, even less so. Yeah. So there would have been some issues there, of course.
Right. Definitely. And I think the wonderful thing about Formula One right now, it has actually evolved. It has become. I will always say, everybody says this. Formula One is a very sexy sport. It is a very sexy sport. But once you go into the intricacy of the sexiness, once you take away the sexiness, you realize it's a very serious sport. It's a very technical sport. It's pardon the pun. It's a very it changes very quickly. But right now with the new owners that's come into Formula One, it is trying to make Formula One a lot more relevant to the younger audience.
Yes, because what was happening under the previous ownership with Bernie Eccleston, I think they were stuck in a mindset of this is the way we do it, and they were not embracing digital technology, and they basically the Formula One viewership base was actually aging quite dramatically.
That's right.
But Darren, what are ultimately the Lotus project, which then evolved into the Caterham project, was not a very successful, it didn't come to a successful end.
Sure.
What do you think the lessons were that we could take away from a business standpoint? Of course, let's be fair. When you attempt something pioneering and new, there are going to be some expensive lessons.
Yes.
There are going to be lots of mistakes made. But what do you think could be the lessons drawn?
Yeah.
Because one of the things that I think was quite interesting is we now have a very successful MotoGP team, the Petronas MotoGP team.
Right.
And they're winning races.
Right.
Literally
Right.
in their first season they won races. Second season now, I think they're, if I'm not mistaken, they're either number 1 or number 2 in the championship. So obviously some lessons were learned there. What do you think the lessons that, what would you have done differently?
I would say that it's also really about resources, resources from human aspects and financial side. That I would reckon it is quite crucial in terms of having a successful team, simply because I still remember one conversation that I had with Tony was that, you know what, we need to make sure we are faster by 0.5% or 0.5 seconds. 0.5 seconds is less than a second. But I said, then somebody in the team calculated and said 0.5% means I need to invest another 10 million pounds because I need to make sure the wings are like that, the aerodynamics are like that, the downforce is like that, and whatever it may be. So we need to reconfigure. So it's really about financial resources. Now the financial resources would be something that's difficult to say, well, you're going to have a bottomless pit, right? But there are ways of getting it. Sponsorships, collaborations and things like that. Now then comes human resources. I would say it's also about getting the right types of people and literally the right people in the right places. In all fairness to some of my ex-colleagues, I would say I realized they're probably not in the right places to run certain parts of the organization, and also the lack of experience. And because we were new, we didn't actually have enough experience to be able to go after and challenge the big boys. So I would say that it's more of resources more than anything else. Yeah.
Darren, it was a fascinating conversation. Thank you very much for being on the show.
No problem. Thank you.
I'm Brian Fernandez, and we've been speaking to Darren Choy, the Managing Director of Warner Music Malaysia. Please check out biztech.asia for business and technology conversations.